Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, impeach Steve Marshall. Also, the V-Team takes a look at a state cyber attack. And the porch band of Creek Indians need a little help from President Donald Trump.
You're approving for Indian. Why don't you approve it for everybody then?
That's not a
if your case is non-discriminatory, why don't you approve for everybody? You're saying only Indians. Wait a minute, sir.
Stand for it in 5
You're saying
minutes.
only Indians can have the reservations, only Indians can have the gaming. So why aren't you approving it for everybody? Why are you being discriminatory? Why is it that the Indians don't pay tax, but everybody else does? I do. They don't look like Indians to me, sir.
I guess the Trump train doesn't stop at the Wind Creek Casino. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Hi guys. Hello.
Hello.
Hope everybody had a happy New Year and good Christmas.
Josh, how's my baby doing?
I don't know who your baby is, but my baby's doing great.
Well, I am so...
Those are fighting words.
I am so glad.
She's the cutest. She's really cute. Kid.
She's doing great.
Yeah, I agree.
She's
She
doing
is
great.
really
She looks like a mom.
I'm just happy that the war...
That helps. Yeah, she no longer has my hair.
Nah, she has grown in a couple.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, she looks great. Well, I'm happy that the war on Christmas is over. Christmas won.
Sure.
Again. Now we have the war on Valentine's Day because Walmart or the big box stores already have the Valentine's stuff out, which is pretty amazing.
Well, I like dark chocolate for any of our viewers who are watching.
Yeah. Okay. Look out. Okay. Over the holidays, Susan and I received a flat envelope, large envelope, which we get from time to time, and we have a bomb-sniffing dog, and we check for anthrax and all those things.
But
Same
usually they
process
don't
in
have
my
a return address.
Yes.
This one had a return address. They were proud of what they'd sent
Yes,
us.
and so that encouraged us to open it up more readily. And it was a concerned citizen that had watched the show and read our reports on Attorney General Steve Marshall, and he had a suggestion that he felt he wanted these bumper stickers.
Is that what you've given us?
Yes, bumper stickers.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
And we got exactly
And,
4.
We got 4. So
Exactly 4.
thank you
Thank
for
you.
the 4 bumper stickers. Mine is going on right after the show. I think it's a darn fine idea.
I'm going to put it on my laptop.
Yeah. Well, it's not a laughing matter. I mean, but it's kind of
Very
funny.
professionally done, too. I mean,
They are. I mean, they're very well done.
Spent some money on those, and they are red, so it obviously a Republican.
Yeah,
who's
yes.
wanting them.
Yeah, they wanted it to stand out, too.
So I just, so we looked at impeachment, and basically any constitutional officer can be impeached, Josh, for any number of reasons, including, what do they call it? Intemperance is one, and
Intemperance in the use of intoxicating liquors.
Yeah.
Or narcotics.
Or narcotics.
I know a lot of people that are intemperate at the
Sometimes
State House.
narcotics make you temperate, though. It just depends.
So essentially, we could impeach the entire state house.
Yeah, I think we could.
We
Well,
could
we
get
could
there.
get at least half of them, I think.
Well, you can add in moral turpitude for those that are not intoxicated or on liquor.
Well,
or
if we could get all
Well, it
the
says
intoxicated people
incompetency, too.
and the moral turpitude, we get them all out of
we
here.
clean the
Everybody else.
entire state out.
Yeah. Well, Beth, you looked like you wanted to say something or either throw up. I wasn't sure.
I'm just, gosh, I'm just thinking about the people that the state elects time and time again. It just makes me a little sick.
Yeah. Well,
As well it
you know,
should.
I think it's interesting that that there are people that are actually thinking about this. There was no Russian hacking that we know. There was just illegal money from the Republican Attorney General's Association. Yeah. That's all. That's the illegal activities there. Beth, this last mid-December, last week we reported on it, mid-December, Alabama network, the cloud network that runs all the state, was hacked. And they wanted to kind of paper over it and act like, well, it was no big deal. But yet they had 40,000 employees change their passwords and said that people had been issuing phony invoices to finance and interagency phony invoices.
Right. So what they said is, they sent an email to every state employee, but also I think it went to every state contractor and anybody who does business through STARS. So about 40,000 people got an email saying, not only change your state passwords, but any personal password you've used for the past 6 months. So that's going to be your bank account, your credit cards, anything like that you're having to now go back in and protect. A hole this big is, it's unconscionable that they would have allowed this kind of a gap to come in when there are people, especially in today's day and age of cybersecurity and how you have to be so vigilant. It's insane to me.
As a STARS, as someone who has to bill the state from time to time, they're saying just watch your invoices. Okay, folks, it's not that simple. In order for you, I can't just submit an invoice at random to the state. The agency that I'm working with has to generate a PO. That PO has to go
purchase order, right?
Purchase order.
Yeah.
Thank you. That has to be entered into STARS. As a contractor, I have to go into STARS, identify the agency, identify the PO, and then I can match an invoice to this. This is much more complicated and serious. The hole has to be huge for them to be able to do this.
Well, but Josh, they inform people to monitor the accounts closely, so it doesn't seem to indicate that this is over, even though they tried to act as if it were over.
No, and it seems like we have a continuing problem with that. And I understand other people get hacked. Big companies get hacked a lot.
Sure.
But it's usually for the release of random information. But the idea that there's somebody kind of hanging out in there and generating POs and invoices, and that we're paying them, and I would like to know exactly what they've paid. How much does this cost everybody?
Yeah, right. And they've tried to really downplay the whole thing, but these people...
It's worth noting, too, so the email they sent says, the bad actors have been identified by IP address and blocked where possible. So
where
keep
possible.
in mind, too, legal reviewed this email before it went out. Blocked where possible.
Where
And
possible.
anybody that's ever done any web work knows that your computer doesn't have a static IP address.
Yeah.
They can't just go, oh, Josh, by the way, I got your number because I got your IP address.
Okay. Well, I want to move on. We only got about a minute and 15 seconds. Who is going to challenge Doug Jones for 2020? On the Republican side, we know there's a whole lot coming. But I mean, what do you think? What are you hearing out there, Josh?
I think everybody whose name you've ever heard of on the Republican side is going to challenge Doug Jones for the seat. The question I think that we had before where we were talking about this is whether or not Doug is going to be challenged on the Democratic side. And obviously there was a big uproar in the leadership of the Democratic Party in the state. And
that's still ongoing right now. There's a credentials challenge ongoing.
Yep. And so I think that they're probably, as spiteful as Joe Reed and Nancy Worley have been at times, and when they are challenged, I think he'll probably get a challenge from them on that side, which is pretty much suicide for them.
Oh, absolutely. But Joe Reed and Nancy Worley do not have the party's best interest at heart. And let's remember that. Joe Reed, especially not for 20 years, has had the party's best interest at heart. So it's time. If they want to come after Doug Jones, I love Doug. I trust Doug. I think he's the best man for the job. If they want to come for him and he loses the primary, which Joe Reed hasn't won an election in 10 years, but if he loses the primary, we're done. The party's dead. So I would highly encourage the left to come behind him and unify, and the Republicans let them fight it out on their primary.
Well, that's going to have to be the last word on that. You're watching the V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and opinion.
Hey man, what are you doing today?
Playing the game. Thought I'd go out for a drive later maybe. Text some friends while I'm doing it. Scroll through social media. Kill a family 4 and a head on collision.
Cool, man.
Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Josh, you and I have talked about this quite a bit over the last year. The Porch Band of Creek Indians have become fabulously wealthy because they have a monopoly on gaming in Alabama, something that they shouldn't have legally, they should not have morally, they shouldn't have at all, but they have it. They have been scared to death since President Trump took office because he doesn't seem to like Native Americans. No. He hates that they make a lot of money gaming. But
especially when his casinos were so successful.
But there is a legitimate case here, and this was the case in 2009 when the Supreme Court ruled that tribes that were not in land, tribes that were not recognized in 1934 and land taken into trust is questionable. It's questionable whether Porch Creek is actually a tribe and whether they can have the land they have, because the Indian Act of 1934, that they say that's when the cutoff was. Porch Creek didn't come around until the 80s. But the Trump administration has been even more aggressive than just the carcieri thing.
The carcieri deal there was kind of viewed by most of these people under the Obama administration as a minor sort of bump in the road, and people in the Interior Department at that point said, "Listen, we're gonna work this out. Everybody, calm down." And they put some things in there. If you'd had your land in trust for more than I believe it was 6 years, everything is fine, no worries, no big deal. Well, then the Trump administration happened, and there are no rules in the Trump administration, as we have all seen. And listen, you can like that or dislike that or whatever, but the fact is that's true. That's kind of true. They kind of run by their own drum there, and so that has been the case for several tribes here, and a couple of tribes in the Northeast have figured this out the hard way. One had a casino blocked. Just out of the blue, and most people in the lawsuit they're claiming that was because of some lobbying that was done by the MGM casinos and some benefits that were paid off to some people under the table. But then there was another tribe that, an unprecedented move, had its land removed from trust after the former head of Indian Affairs said that everything was fine, all was good. The new one came in and said, no, we're going to take that out because you haven't had enough interaction with us here. And so when you have those sort of actions take place, you have people running scared. And that's what's happening with the Porch Creek.
And they should, because they have been trying since 2009, they've been trying to get a carcieri fix. And during the Obama administration was the closest they ever came. At one point, there was a bill that got through the House that was a specific carcieri fix for the Porch Creek Indians, but it went to the Senate, and Richard Shelby said no, Susan. Richard Shelby is not going to give the Indians their carcieri fix.
And he never is going to give them their carcieri fix. The only hope they have here is a compact with the state. And they aren't seeing that as beneficial, and maybe they do now. But, that's the only fix, because Richard Shelby's never going to go around carcieri.
Yeah, and they've done some things that let you know that they're worried about the future of this thing. They've kind of diversified and started buying properties outside of the state and going into casinos outside of the state. And so, they're, in that time period, most people thought this was going to be a slam dunk through Congress that there was going to be a carcieri fix come along, and it just never happened. One person blocked it here or there at different times, and they just could never get any traction with this, which, again, has to make them worry about the future of things if you have this number of people saying, wait a minute, we think things have maybe trended a little too far in favor of the Indians, which is really, if you look at the history, we can make some real arguments.
Really, we have a long way to go before it's there.
Exactly.
And I would argue that I would love to see the Porch Creek make all the money they want. I think they can make money. I'm all for it. What I'm not for is for them owning the state government, which is what they're doing. They are buying politicians by the dozen, and they're getting them cheap, Beth. And the thing is, and I don't pretend to speak for Richard Shelby, but I believe Richard Shelby sees the same thing we do, that if there's no counterbalance to the Porch Creek Indians, that they will own the state government of Alabama. We know for certain that Robbie McGee has been in bed with some of the foulest creatures in Alabama politics, including Bob Riley, Billy Canary, and that whole bunch. Now, when you sidle up to them, when you crawl under the sheets with them, you are a danger to the state.
Yeah, as Claire says, if you lay down with dogs, there's going to be an axe in the woodpile.
Well, and there should
That's
be.
the way Claire talks. Well, no, and there's 2 points to that I want to make too, because you're saying you can, Josh, you're saying how you can watch them scramble, and I tend to look, because I've got a PR background, I tend to look at things that way, and I can't help but notice when I turn on the morning news, there are positive spots about Porch Creek running, and they are spending 6 figures with every major news outlet right now, except us, apparently.
Of course.
Par for the course. But they're spending big money to improve public perception of their brand, because they are a brand just like everyone else. So I think that's important to look at. And the second thing is, you know, ever since Dr. Hubbard died and AEA kind of dissolved from what it formerly was, there hasn't been there's a huge power vacuum here in Montgomery, and I think that Porch Creek's trying to step up and fill that vacuum. And the thing is, like, Alabama is better when there are more people with a seat at the table.
And I think there's a couple other things that, you know, we only got about a minute here, but I want us to address real quickly, is that Porch Creek is a sovereign nation. Alabama is a sovereign state. They come to Montgomery all the time and make demands that we not do anything about gaming, but they don't let us go down to Atmore and make demands about what they're doing.
No, they want to meddle in our business, our state government business, but we're not allowed to meddle in theirs.
You know, but I think more so than anything else here is that there's room for everybody here to make money, and there's room for not only everybody to make money, but for the state to take in revenue from what's taking place here. And I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with the Porch Creek's earning money. What I have a problem with is that 7% or 9% or whatever not coming back into the states for roads and bridges and everything else that goes into this, and to fix the gambling issues that come about from casinos. Right. So, you know, that's my only issue with this whole thing is I think there's room enough for everybody to coexist here and for us to make a ton of money as a state that could fix a lot of problems.
Yeah. And as you've brought up in articles before, you know, the Porch Creek get to use our roads and bridges without paying any taxes toward that, or as any other trucking industry. So it's more far-reaching than just taxing the gambling.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're going to have to let that be the last word. It's bigger than taxing gambling, but it's not fair that they've got it all. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and analysis.
The Energy Institute of Alabama promotes reliable, affordable, and clean energy to help grow our economy, create high-paying jobs, and build public support for Alabama's energy industry. Access to clean, affordable energy continues to be an issue of vital importance in the halls of government and around the kitchen tables across our nation. The Energy Institute of Alabama is the best source of energy industry information and how it affects households across the state, from convenient energy production to alternative fuels to solar power and beyond.
What are you doing today, babe?
I thought I'd head down to the lake with the guys, do a little fishing. Of course, none of us will be wearing our seatbelts. I'll lose control of the truck, wrap it around a tree, and kill us all.
Okay.
Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We learned in December that Attorney General Steve Marshall, Josh, stepped in and took over the investigation into the death of E.J. Bradford, who was the young man that was shot in the Hoover Galleria Mall in Hoover. The police officer who shot him shot the wrong man. He was not the perpetrator who had started the shooting in there. The big question that we're asking, and a question that the people that are representing the Bradford family and others in Jefferson County, how is it that Steve Marshall can be trusted to prosecute or investigate this case?
You could have just stopped at trusted. I don't have an answer for that, because I don't believe he can, and mainly because it's really odd that he's taken over the case. If you look at the facts and everything kind of surrounding this thing, there's really no reason for Steve Marshall to have taken over this, other than it's a PR move here, and or to kind of create another layer of bureaucracy in between the folks who are demanding, videos and doing the protesting and all that, and the people who are running this investigation. At this point, I mean, you've got, however many dozens of people who have given witness statements. You've got multiple videos, from my understanding, of the incident that took place. I don't know what I understand we don't necessarily have a prosecutable case at this point, but why are we not talking to people?
Well, remember, too, though, that Danny Carr took over. So Danny Carr was not the district attorney for Jefferson County when the incident happened. Right. He just got sworn in, earlier this week. So we had an election that was shifting everything when this happened. But not only that, Jefferson County has 2 district attorneys. So if for some reason Danny Carr felt the need to conflict out, or somebody wanted to raise an issue and get him recused out of it, then there's also another district attorney in the Jefferson County area, in the Bessemer cutoff, that would have been qualified to do the case.
Well, and it's a bogus conflict of interest that they're citing to me. But Susan, I mean, the thing is, either Marshall thinks he can get good headlines out of this, or he plans on dragging this out, and eventually the case just dies.
I would be willing to bet it's a mix of the both. Because he can get headlines. He's already getting headlines out of this. Yeah. He's from him taking over the case to the protesters at his house. He's working that name recognition just like he did bogusly during the election. But then he can also drag it out to keep getting the headlines on it, and drag it out for the Jefferson County to get it to go away.
I just, my fear is that, Josh, nothing will come of this. Is that it will just get washed away, and we'll have another cop shooting, a black man's life lost, and we'll never know anything. We will never know what we need to know about it.
Yeah, because the one thing in Alabama law is that's kind of bogus, I've always thought, is that you can't get to, let's say the video is part of this case file. If this thing is no bill to the grand jury, you don't have any right to get to that video. Right. And let's be honest. This thing, if you wanted to go in and sell this as a prosecution of the cop there, let's say for manslaughter, if you don't think it rises to murder, let's say we go in as manslaughter, there is no chance that a guy working this the right way could go in before a grand jury and not get that a manslaughter charge out of that grand jury. There's no way that couldn't happen. But what's likely to happen, and what has happened in other places, is that they go in and they lowball it. They kind of half play it, and the grand jury comes out, and you don't know what happens because the whole thing's secret.
Yeah, there's an incredible series on Netflix, 10-part series called 7 Seconds. If you haven't watched it, you should. It deals with an incident not dissimilar from this, in that it's a young black man who is murdered by a police officer, or allegedly murdered by a police officer, and it covers the tragedy and the social side of this, and evidently the politics in the county where that took place in New Jersey is just as corrupt as it is here in Alabama.
Very similar to Alabama. Well, very recognizable.
And I think it's worth noting too that the people who are protesting. I mean, I know Carlos and Ladarius. I know that group of folks. What they want is the truth. They want answers. And remember, there are 2 families. There are more than 2, but there are families on both sides of this that deserve justice. Because if it was a clean shot, then that officer deserves the benefit of the truth being out. If it was a bad shot, that family deserves justice. So either way you play it, everybody deserves to have the truth.
Sure, and that's all we should have. That is what our justice system is based upon. It's not a base. It's hard to convict a cop because a good attorney will make it about convicting the entire police force. So it's very difficult to do. But we still need to know what happened.
Put the evidence on the table, and let's let everybody decide.
Sure.
I mean, why can't we see the video? Why can't we? I mean, really, the video's not going to change.
No.
You put the video out, it's not going to change.
Well, they'll claim that it doesn't show the whole picture.
That's what concerns me.
If it's a shooting, you get a lot of the picture, right?
From the get-go, they've said they've framed it 3 or 4 different ways. They're not releasing the video. To me, that smells like everything smells in Montgomery. It smells of something's bad there.
I think most reasonable people would say that was a chaotic situation.
Yep.
And let's say, this cop came into this thing, so we're going to give him some level of deference going into it because of what was happening there.
And remember, Josh, too, the standard when you're evaluating whether a police officer made the right decision in one of these cases, you don't look at the whole picture leading up to it. You look at that split second when the decision was made, and that is all that goes into it. There's a really good podcast on it, More Perfect, Mr. Graham and the Reasonable Man. It spells the whole thing out, and it's a really interesting look at why these cases don't always get prosecuted.
Well, and again, I'm not saying one way or the other. What we do need to believe, believe is that we'll get to the facts. From what we know about Attorney General Steve Marshall, that is unlikely. And I know this is why some folks are calling for a special prosecutor or for the federal government to drop in.
Just the way it was taken over. I think most people don't believe now that we're headed towards the truth.
You can't trust him. But we're going to leave it right there. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.